Hello, and welcome to Recipes with Ben. With apples finally back in season, I wanted to make a tasty treat using freshly picked apples, so I thought that making apple donuts would do just the trick. So to start, I'm going to cook down 2 apples in butter and sugar. Before we can do that, I need to chop up some apples. I'll begin this process by slicing around the core of the apple and then chopping them into bite-sized pieces. With all the apples in the bowl and cut up, it's time to hit them with some sugar. So I'm sprinkling 2 spoonfuls of white sugar and tossing them by hand until they're completely covered in the sugar. Next, in a non-stick pan that was heated to medium heat, I began melting about a half a tablespoon of butter. After the butter had fully melted down, I tossed in the 2 apples and began sauteing the apples for several minutes. Over the next 8 to 10 minutes, they began to soften and darken, and then add some lovely caramelization flavors. When the apples were done, it was time to move on to the donut batter itself. So in a stand mixer, I added 1/4 cup each of white and light brown sugar, followed by cracking in 1 egg. Next was a 1/4 cup of oat milk, but regular milk worked just fine if you prefer that. Then with the paddle attachment, it was time to turn on the mixer to medium speed and add in the butter and cream the liquids together. To add another apple element, I'm going to add 1/4 cup of apple butter at this time. So if you want to see how I made that, I'll link that video down below in the description. And lastly, to the wet ingredients, I added a half a teaspoon of vanilla extract. With all the liquid ingredients creamed together, I moved on to the dry ingredients. So in a clean bowl, I combined 1 cup of all-purpose flour, a half a teaspoon each of cinnamon and nutmeg, but feel free to increase the cinnamon this time if you prefer. And then a little less than half a teaspoon of baking powder and baking soda to act as a leavening agent for the donuts. Whisk that all together until combined, and then it's time to mix together the batter. First, fold into the wet ingredients the apples using a spatula, and then it's time for the dry. You don't want to overmix at this time because it will lead to a denser donut, so add the dry ingredients in portions, and once it's all added, only mix until there's no dry patches left in the batter. Next you'll need a donut mold, so I have one of these silicone donut molds that I got online, and for ease of filling them, you probably need a piping bag. Or if you're like me and don't have that, you can just place all the batter in a Ziploc bag, seal it up, and cut a hole in one of the bottom corners of the bag. And squeeze the bag into the mold, making a circle until all the batter is in all the different holes of the mold. Pop that onto a baking tray and bake in a preheated oven set to 375 degrees for 10 to 12 minutes until they're fully cooked on the inside. Once you take them out of the oven, it's important to let them cool down, or they'll stick to the mold when you're trying to get them out and they won't come out as a whole donut. It typically takes about 10 to 15 minutes for them to cool down so they can come out of the molds easy. And carefully remove them from the mold, and if you want to add some sugar topping, now's the time to do that. So I've melted down some butter, and I've mixed about a 1/4 cup of sugar with a teaspoon of cinnamon. I dip the donuts first in the melted butter and flip it over to cover both sides. Now place that in the cinnamon sugar and cover every inch of that donut. Now these donuts are light and somewhere I would say between the texture of a cake and a muffin. The nutmeg and cinnamon lifts up the sweetness, and the cooked apples add just a perfect touch of appleness to the donuts. And with all that said, thank you so much for watching. Smash that like button if you like donuts. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next video. I'll see you again soon.